You ever open a real estate app just to look? Like you tell yourself you're not serious. You're just browsing. You're curious. Maybe it's a Sunday afternoon. You're on the couch. Coffee's gone cold. You type in your city. You adjust the filter to something reasonable. 2 bedrooms. Not too far from work. Decent neighborhood. And then you see the number. You blink. You check it again. You zoom in like maybe there's a typo. And then you do that quiet little calculation in your head. Okay, if I put 20% down, that's how much? And the mortgage would be per month? Oh, and suddenly the idea of owning a home feels less like a milestone and more like a punchline. Meanwhile, your salary, it hasn't exactly exploded in the last 5 years. Maybe you got a small raise. Maybe you switched jobs and bumped your income by 10 or 15%. But house prices, they feel like they've been on rocket fuel. It starts to mess with you a little. You think, am I doing something wrong? Am I behind? Are other people just better at this? My name is Larry, and I spend way too much time thinking about money. Not just the numbers, but the emotions behind it. Why earning more doesn't always feel like progress. Why some financial goals seem to move further away the harder you run toward them. And honestly, why the dream of owning a home feels heavier now than it did for our parents. Because here's the thing, this isn't just about math, it's about psychology, it's about timing, it's about systems. And once you really understand what's going on between your salary and house prices, something shifts. You stop blaming yourself. You start seeing the game more clearly. And when you see the game clearly, you can play it differently. So let's talk about the brutal reality. Not to scare you, not to depress you, but to ground you. Because sometimes the most empowering thing you can hear is, you're not crazy. The math really did change. There was a time, not that long ago, when the idea was simple. You got a stable job. You saved for a few years. You bought a house. It wasn't effortless, but it was linear, predictable. You could look at your salary and estimate your future. Now, it feels non-linear, chaotic, like trying to climb an escalator that's moving down. Let's break this down in simple terms. If your salary grows 3% a year and house prices grow 8% or 10% a year, what happens over a decade? At first, the difference doesn't look dramatic, but compound that gap year after year, and suddenly, the price of that same house is 50%, 70%, even 100% higher, while your income barely kept pace with inflation. It's like watching someone slowly move the finish line while you're jogging toward it. I remember talking to a friend who said, if I had bought 3 years ago, I could afford it. Now I can't. Same job, same city, same person. Just different timing. And that's the first brutal truth. Timing matters more than effort. That's uncomfortable because we love the idea that effort guarantees results. Work hard, earn more, buy a house. But housing is a market, and markets don't care about your work ethic. Why this matters to you is simple. If you feel stuck, it may not be because you're irresponsible. It may be because asset prices, especially housing, have been running faster than wages. So what can you actually do with this knowledge? First, stop measuring yourself against outdated timelines. Your parents buying at 28 doesn't mean you failed at 28. They were playing a different economic version of the game. Second, understand that income alone may not be enough. In today's world, wealth accumulation often requires owning assets, not just earning wages. That realization stings a little, but it's also freeing. Let's say you make $80,000 a year, or $100,000, or even $150,000. On paper, that sounds solid, comfortable. Upper middle class? Maybe. But then you look at home prices in your area. $600,000, $800,000, $1.2 million. Suddenly, your good salary feels small. Why? Because salary is linear. It grows step by step. But asset prices, they're fueled by leverage, speculation, low interest rates, investor demand, foreign capital, supply shortages, forces much bigger than your individual paycheck. Here's a simple example. A family earning $90,000 might qualify for a mortgage of, let's say, $400,000, depending on rates and debt. But if the average home in their area is $550,000, they're already priced out, even though they're doing well. And that creates a strange psychological trap. You feel like you're earning a lot, but you can't access what used to define financial stability. I felt this personally. There's this quiet frustration when you realize, I can afford rent comfortably. I can travel occasionally. I can save a bit, but I can't buy. It's like being financially stable, but locked out of wealth building. So what's the takeaway here? Don't confuse a high salary with financial power. Financial power comes from cash flow, assets, low debt, optionality. If your salary is high, but house prices are even higher, you're not weak. You're just up against an asset inflation machine. And once you understand that, you stop saying, I should be able to afford this. You start asking, does this make sense for me? That shift is subtle, but powerful. Now let's talk about the thing nobody likes to think about, interest rates. When rates are low, like 2%, or 3%. People can afford bigger mortgages, so they bid up home prices. Everything feels manageable. Then rates jump to 6% or 7%. Suddenly, that same house costs hundreds or even thousands more per month. Here's the part that really hurts. When rates rise, prices don't always fall enough to compensate. So buyers get squeezed from both sides. Higher prices, higher borrowing costs. I remember running a mortgage calculator just out of curiosity. Same house, two scenarios. At 3% interest, manageable payment. At 7% interest, borderline insane. And that's the brutal math most people don't talk about. When your salary stays roughly the same but borrowing costs double, your buying power shrinks dramatically. Why this matters to you is simple. Housing affordability isn't just about the sticker price. It's about monthly payment relative to income. Actionable takeaway? If you're considering buying, run multiple interest rate scenarios. Don't just look at today's rate. Stress test your budget. Ask yourself, if my income dropped 10%, would I still feel safe? Because a house shouldn't just fit your income, it should fit your peace of mind. This one's uncomfortable. As salaries rise, even modestly, most of us upgrade our lives a bit. Better apartment, nicer car, more dinners out. Maybe a vacation that used to feel extravagant now feels normal. That's lifestyle inflation. But here's the kicker. While we're upgrading our consumption slowly, assets are upgrading much faster. A house isn't just something you live in. It's an asset class. So while you're increasing your expenses by 5%, housing prices might be increasing by 10% or more. It's like you're walking up a hill, and the hill is growing taller. Now, I'm not saying live like a monk. Life is meant to be enjoyed. But the brutal reality is this. The earlier you redirect income toward assets instead of consumption, the more protected you are from runaway prices. Even small investments, index funds, retirement accounts, real estate exposure can at least put you on the same side of the equation as asset growth. Why this matters? Because if you're only relying on salary, you're always chasing. If you own assets, even small ones, you're participating. That's a completely different feeling. Let's step away from spreadsheets for a second, because this isn't just about math, it's about emotion. Watching friends buy homes can feel weird. You're happy for them. Of course you are. But there's this tiny voice that whispers, why not me? And social media doesn't help. House keys, moving day photos, finally homeowners. You scroll, you smile, you feel something. The brutal truth is that housing has become a status symbol again, not just a necessity. So when prices rise faster than wages, it doesn't just affect your net worth, it affects your identity. Here's the reframe. Buying at the wrong time can be worse than waiting. Over-leveraging yourself just to keep up can create stress that quietly eats away at your life. I've seen people house rich and cash poor. Beautiful home, constant anxiety. That's not freedom. So if you feel behind, pause. Ask, behind compared to what? And according to who? Your financial timeline is not a race. It's a risk management strategy. We've been told renting is throwing money away. But let's challenge that for a second. When you rent, you avoid property taxes. You avoid maintenance costs. You avoid large upfront down payments. You maintain flexibility. If housing prices are inflated and interest rates are high, renting and investing the difference can sometimes make more sense, not emotionally, but financially. I'm not saying renting is superior. I'm saying it's situational. The brutal reality is this. Homeownership is both a lifestyle decision and a financial one. And sometimes the financially smart move doesn't look glamorous. Takeaway? Run the numbers honestly, not emotionally. Calculate total cost of ownership, opportunity, cost of your down payment, your long-term plans. Then decide, not based on pressure, based on clarity. Let's zoom out. Why are house prices rising so aggressively in many places? Supply constraints, zoning laws, institutional investors buying homes, population growth in certain cities, cheap credit cycles, inflation. This isn't just about you budgeting better. It's about structural forces. And once you accept that, something shifts inside you. You stop internalizing systemic problems as personal failures. You start thinking strategically instead of emotionally. Maybe that means moving to a lower cost area, increasing income intentionally, delaying purchase, partnering financially, investing in assets outside your local housing market. The key is this: you can't control the system, but you can adapt to it. So here we are. Your salary versus house prices. And yeah, the reality is brutal. Wages have grown slowly. Assets have grown quickly. Interest rates shift unpredictably. The emotional pressure is real. But here's what's equally real. You are not behind because you're lazy. You are not irresponsible because you can't buy. You are not failing because the math changed. The world shifted. And once you see that clearly, you can stop fighting ghosts. You can build skills, increase income strategically, invest consistently, stay flexible, avoid emotional decisions, protect your peace. Owning a home can still be a beautiful goal, but it shouldn't cost you your sleep. The ultimate aim isn't a house. It's stability, optionality, freedom. And sometimes, ironically, the path to those things isn't the most obvious one. So if you've been staring at those listing prices and feeling that quiet pit in your stomach, take a breath, zoom out, run the numbers, adjust your strategy. You're not crazy. The game changed. Now it's just about learning how to play it wisely.